Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. We are going to be talking today about the use of virtual communities to help build collaboration and professional development among educators, especially those who are teaching online. From there, so I'm Katie. I am co-founder and CEO at Inscribe. I'm really just your moderator for today. For those of you that aren't as familiar, Inscribe is a virtual community platform. So our goal is to help connect individuals with their peers and other experts around topics that they're learning. So they have a space that they can always turn to when they have a question or need help or want to collaborate. We do a lot of work with students, but I think something that we all know is that faculty are learning too. And just like students, they need help and support. And so we often have a lot of our institutions using our communities to build faculty spaces as well. And speaking of which, I am joined today by Ryan Allen McKinney, who is the Senior Manager for Faculty Engagement and Development at 2U. So a little bit of background on Ryan Allen. His team is really focused on empowering faculty so that they can create engaging digital learning environments for their students who are attending some of the world's top universities. He is really fascinated by how technology and science can be used to enhance the art of teaching and learning. Before he came to 2U, and we'll learn a little bit more about 2U for those of you that don't know about it, Ryan Allen he's been in the higher ed industry for more than a decade, most recently working for George Mason University as the Associate Director of Student Services and Employee Development. Ryan has a BM in music education from the University of Hartford and an MED in higher ed administration from Kent State University. So we're super excited to have you here, Ryan. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And I will not be showing my music degree at any point during this
session. You're not going to play something for us?
I can just anticipate the chat's going now. I will not be singing or performing in any way.
Somebody has to heckle him about that in the chat, please. So I was at karaoke last night, actually, Mark. Next slide. So we already asked you to take a minute to introduce yourself, and I saw a lot of people doing so in the chat, so I really appreciate that. Again, we are all about collaboration and community, so hopefully you guys can make some additional friends and colleagues while you're here. So just to set the stage of why we thought that this particular conversation was really important and relevant right now. The last couple of years obviously have been crazy and disruptive in higher education, everything, that happened with COVID and this big push to online. And for a lot of us, and Ryan Allen in particular has been working in the online space for a long time. So was already really aware that when you're asking faculty to make a big change, like a real shift in their pedagogical approach and model, it requires a different level of engagement and support. And so as faculty are kind of coming out and starting to settle into all of the changes that they maybe encountered over the last 18 to 24 months. I think a lot of institutions have recognized that just doing point in time professional development is not really enough to support faculty over the long term. And what you really need is an ongoing, continuous approach that they feel like they can turn to, where it's a trusted space, they feel heard and supported, and they really have the opportunity to collaborate with others on an ongoing basis. So that's a lot about what we're going to talk about today, which I think many institutions are struggling with and trying to find innovative ways to bring technology into the space to help that happen. Next. All right, so at this point, I am going to turn it over to Ryan Allen, who is going to tell you a little bit about 2U, and then we'll get into the conversation about the communities and how they're being utilized.
Great, thanks. So yeah, I want to take a little time to talk a little about 2U and just let everyone know the context of where I'm sitting as in my work. So 2U, we collaborate and partner with top universities from all around the world to help them bring their online, their courses and programs online in a variety of different ways. And our tagline here is limiting the back row in higher education. And I'm not going to read all the fancy words here that are on the slide, but you can see that that's our mission. We do that in a variety of different ways in our degree programs, both graduate and undergraduate. We have boot camps and short courses. And we're continuing to expand and evolve that our messages as we go. I work mainly in the degree side, so our graduate and undergraduate degree programs. But with this slide, the next slide, you can see these are some of the institutions that we collaborate with to bring their courses and programs into the online space. So that's a little bit about that. So maybe you see
a few schools.
Just a few schools. You might see some familiar logos there. To talk a little bit about the degree programs in particular, which is where I spend most of my time, we have 26 different verticals with a variety of different institutions. Most heavily, we use our graduate programs. Graduate degrees take about 2.5 years to complete, but we do have some undergraduate degrees as well. And so that's a little statistics there. To date, we've been working in the degree space for over a decade now. We've enrolled over 80,000 students in climbing. We have graduated at least 36,000 people, 26 different disciplines. And a significant part of our approach to degree education in the online space is we use a flipped classroom model. So pretty much every degree program has a week of async content or a module of async content that culminates in a live session, typically hosted in Zoom, where a small group of students with a faculty member engage in live conversation. So they have rich asynchronous experience as well as an engaging live session experience. So just to put that in context. So my team in particular, the faculty engagement and development team at 2U, within our company, we are seen as the educational experts in how to utilize 2U platforms. Now, we said before, I have a music degree. I don't know how to build the technology like Katie and the people at Inscribe do this amazing work of creating technology from the ground up. But I can look at a piece of technology in my team and say, okay, how can an educator use this to create a better experience for students? So that's really where we fall in the scope of the company. For our partners, we work directly with those faculty to help them teach effectively in this digital space. And we do that in a variety of different methods. So we provide resources, one-on-one group coaching training sessions. We observe them in the classroom and we provide feedback for what we're noticing, how they can improve, and the services that 2U can provide them to grow in that space. And most importantly, how I explain it to my mother, we teach teachers how to teach online. And that seems to be the simplest way to say it out loud. But
I need a line like that for my parents. That's perfect. I don't
it's just easier that way. That makes sense. So just to talk a little bit more, my team specifically, as Katie mentioned, we are really in the business of empowering faculty, helping them leverage the ecosystem that 2U provides as a company to give their students a great learning environment. And that means that what we define as a great learning environment is that it's engaging as well as equitable, and it creates transformative student outcomes. And so those are key, and that's a lot of what we're doing on a day-to-day basis. And we approach it in thinking of it as three different skills that a faculty to be effective in a digital space have to know. Obviously, they have to know their content. Whatever discipline they're in, they need to know that content well and be well versed in it so that they can engage in that. Where we as 2U really help lean in on even heavier is the technology. They need to be able to understand how technology works and how they can utilize it to create a better an engaging learning environment for their students, and so it doesn't become a roadblock. And we're definitely what we're seeing during this COVID time, many faculty, at least initially, were seeing the technology that they're having to use as a roadblock. And most of our job is how do we get them to utilize technology effectively so it stops being a roadblock for them and starts being a value add, where they can do things in the learning space that they've never been able to do before in their previous environments on ground, hybrid, whatever it was. And then the other important space that we do is teaching. So making sure that our faculty have a good understanding of how adults learn, the different, most up to date, what's going on in the world, what we're learning about how people learn. So again, like Katie said, I'm really fascinated all the times about the science of learning, and how we can use the art of teaching, because it is an art, how we can help people define their skills in the art of teaching and connect that with the science of learning so that we're providing that great learning environment for the students.
I feel like that is what you just said is something that was going to resonate with everybody in this, what number one, how do you prevent technology from being a barrier and get it to where it's actually being a facilitation device? So I'm sure that can resonate. And chime in the chat, everyone, if you encountered that or have, the magic wand on that yourselves.
Yeah, if someone has the magic wand, let me know. We'll talk later. Yeah, so that's a little about our team and how we kind of approach it. And just to show you a little bit about the services we provide, we focus a lot on those new faculty come in, and we're providing them lots of onboarding training experiences. So we are meeting with them one-on-one to help them make sure they know how to build their content, how to teach asynchronous content effectively, how to facilitate those synchronous live sessions, and really understand how to utilize what we know as really effective teaching strategies in the digital space, and how they can give quality feedback to students and grades and those kind of things. So that's a lot what we do in the onboarding space. And then we provide ongoing training and coaching for any faculty who are in a 2U powered program. So lots of resources, which we'll probably be talking about mostly today. And then unlimited coaching sessions. So if a faculty member has a question that's come up year 2 of teaching, they can schedule time with one of my training specialists, and they would be happy to answer those questions directly. We also do a lot of professional development, which we call enrichment. We do seminars all the time, similar to something like this today, when we're talking about specific topics that are happening in the education or ed tech or digital education space. We provide in-class observation and feedback opportunities, and other, communicate through a newsletter regularly, some things, articles and other things that we found that would be interesting to try and help faculty stay connected with what's going on in the digital education world. So that is a summary of 2U and faculty engagement development directly.
Awesome. So it sounds like the model here is very similar to how I think a lot of institutions think about coaching and advising students, right? Bring them in and onboard them, make sure they have dedicated resources they could go to, and provide continuous touch points so that people aren't potentially falling through the cracks or kind of losing their momentum partway through the process.
Absolutely. Yes.
Which I think will tie nicely into how we think about digital communities. So do you want to speak to this, Ryan Allen? So Inscribe is working with 2U in a bunch of different ways around digital communities. Do you want to speak to this, or do you want me to take it?
Sure, I can speak to it. That'd be fine. And we have this beautiful visual to kind of show. So it's perfect segue. Yeah, so when we've started working with Inscribe probably earlier in the year, like really ramping up and trying to think through how we can leverage this tool. And we're approaching it in 3 different ways as a company. We're using educator resources. So these are utilizing Inscribe to kind of help get our resources more effectively out to the faculty who need them. Faculty course communities, these are spaces that we're creating for faculty that are teaching the same course, multiple sections of the same course, where a space for them to communicate, share resources, create and maintain live session plans. And so those are probably 2 we're going to focus mostly on today. But we're also looking at academic communities. So these are what we're defining academic communities as is in a specific course, students and faculty interacting with each other and sharing ideas. And then our student communities, more broadly program-wide or university-wide spaces where students can share information, engage, connect outside the classroom.
Awesome. Yeah, so 2U is really thinking about the idea of community across many, many lenses. Today, we're really going to focus in on the ones that are related to educator and faculty development, which you probably gathered from Ryan Allen's introduction. If you have questions about those other models of community, let us know. We're happy to touch on them. We did have a question come into the chat, Ryan Allen, about how you partition what you're sharing from the resources that the campus itself is providing. And I don't know if that means like the difference between resources their school might provide versus what you provide, or how do you partition stuff that you're providing globally versus stuff that you might provide uniquely to one institution at a time?
Sure, yeah. With a partnership with 2U, a course that's powered by 2U is going to be in 2U technology. We're supporting that. It's our online tech support that's providing technical assistance. So it's really, when you partner with 2U, you have kind of like a separate ecosystem that you're working in, including the onboarding and resources that we provide. So hopefully that's an enhancement to whatever the university is also providing. But when you have a 2U powered course, we're really taking the support and the guidance through it directly, and that's usually we work through those details with the partnership with the institution.
Awesome.
Yeah.
If that did not answer your question, Peter, jump in and clarify, and we'll come back to it. Awesome. So let's talk a little bit right now about, you're obviously doing a tremendous amount of work already for faculty, and you guys had really been thoughtful about how you put this program together. So let's talk a little bit about what was it in that program that you were observing that thought, there's one piece of this puzzle that's missing that would help us solve some of these challenges. Yeah,
I think like when we were looking for a tool that would allow us to build community among our faculty and students, some of the things specifically with the faculty idea is we were trying to find the best way to help faculty who are teaching the same course communicate more effectively and share information. If this is a model that any of your institutions might use, we were finding that, especially our newest instructors weren't able to get the full context of where this course is, how it's developed. Faculty tend to communicate via like an email chain that maybe been going on for the last 5 years, and that may not be the most effective way to communicate that, the details. Maybe they have a shared Google Drive or some other sort of space where they're sharing resources if that was helpful. So we were looking to see if we can find a solution where those kind of interactions and knowledge base could happen within the platform consistently and not rely on, a course design or course lead or the lead faculty of the course having to remember to add someone to all these things, right? If they get added to the course, they get the wealth of information from the community. So that's one of the things we were looking at. And really, again, how do you share the evolution of this course? How did this start? Where is it now, 2-3 years into offering this course? So we're looking for that. Also, so those are mostly on the faculty course community side that we're really solving for. And then on our educator resources side, we were really looking for how do we gather feedback, get the pulse of what faculty are using better than what we were doing. We were using a lot of Google Docs. We would create a Google Doc and we'd send it off into the world and we'd have it in a nice little course, but we didn't really understand like who was interacting with it. We didn't turn on the comment feature because we didn't want that, all out in the world. So it was hard to really say like this, this resource was being used by this amount of people and gathering information about it. Like we would send out surveys and things, how are you utilizing our resources? And, I get surveyed out and it becomes very general. So I don't know, they give me out of 10, my resources are a 9. well, where was the issue? What's the issue? Or if it's a 7, I didn't know which specific resource we could make better. So we're looking for how do we get that direct feedback about particular resources and see what's working and what's not. And then a combination of the two things, like we have all these resources, like a resource bank, but how do we help faculty connect that directly to how they're teaching this course or what's going on with this course? So how do we say, okay, we've got this way to set up a grade book, and everyone teaching 504 should set up their grade book this way. And so the combination of our educator resources and a faculty course community might help facilitate some of that. And then mostly easily find resources and then the related resources. And that's where like the AI and Inscribe will be really interesting and helpful, because usually when we send a Google Doc out of a resource, there's no, okay, what's the next step, right? Unless we linked other Google Docs into that specific one, where what we were seeing with Inscribe, the nice thing is that it keeps the faculty in the Inscribe environment and they've got the related articles on the right, or they can search for the topic and see other things. And so it really helped. It's really going to help faculty find like, oh, I was interested in that. What's the next place to go? So that's what we're looking for.
Awesome. What's next?
All right.
There you go. Well, so I think those are challenges that a lot of people think about, right? Like, how do you help onboard new faculty in a more effective way? How do I know if the stuff that I'm producing is actually helping anybody? I think we've all seen surveys come back that are either too generalized, or by the time the survey goes back, the faculty member can't even remember what they got in the first place. So the information isn't kind of real time coming back to you. So curious to know from the audience, how are you thinking about gathering this feedback from faculty today? Are there specific techniques that you're using to help bring them together and scale this kind of conversation? And have you made changes to that model as sort of online learning maybe has blossomed more at your school? I guess it depends on your type of institution, but would love to just know from the folks in the audience how they're thinking about this. And as we move through, we'll keep an eye on those and maybe bring some of those into the conversation as well. All right, moving on now, Ryan. Okay, cool. So we talked about, some of the opportunities that you saw there, some of the ways that you thought bringing community in could really enhance this work that you're doing. So I think it'd be useful to maybe look at how you've designed these communities and how you're thinking about integrating them into the flow of the work that you're doing with these faculty.
Sure. I'll start with the faculty course communities, because that's the one I'm excited about both of them, but I'm really excited about the faculty course community and the opportunities it has to really build more cohesive community among faculty who are teaching the same course. So with the faculty course communities, we want to be able to provide a space for, if you're all teaching course 500, a place to go to ask questions, learn from each other, and guide the learning practices and the teaching practices that you are integrating. And in particular, we want to be able to have a space where the leader of the course, or the lead faculty member, we call course leads typically, can create live session plans, share slide decks, or anything that might be helpful for those live sessions, as well as any rubrics, teaching, grading strategies, some place where they can have all that information readily on hand within the environment. We also want to, again, to have that opportunity for what we call section instructors. So usually the faculty that are teaching those sections, leading the live sessions, grading the assignments and assessments, where they can share feedback on, week 1 went really well, week 2, in this module on this page, there was something weird here, the spelling mistakes, so that they can alert the course lead that they can make those changes, or ask our team to help support making changes and updates to the content. And then for us, it helps to you insight into how faculty are engaging with it, and we can help provide resources and direct information of, hey, I see that you're having this difficulty in this course, or you're trying to solve this problem. Our team can help. Come to a training, we can do a workshop with you. Here's a resource, whatever that is. So we can help intervene to support whatever particular issues they're trying to address. So that's that faculty course community. So basically how we've structured it is every course that we support will have a course community integrated into the system, and that course community will live for as long as that course is alive. So that was one of the things. Do we make a new one every term? And we've decided for now anyway, we're going to keep it the same. So we're gathering that information and it's growing and building upon each other as the course grows. We've created a template for live session planning that we will provide the course lead to add information to, and we will provide services and resources and strategize about effective lesson planning, thinking about all the details that you might need to tell a new section instructor or even a veteran section instructor about what you need to do this week, what are your learning objectives, all those fun things. We wanted to make sure that the course lead has facilitator access so they can edit things whenever they want. And section instructors, I think, have, I forget the role, that where they can comment and upvote and downvote, but they can't necessarily edit the resources that are in there. Is that what's that role?
I don't remember the name of that role either, but that makes sense. But I appreciate the concept though, is that different folks have different sort of levels of rights in terms of how they can engage in the community and what they're contributing, partly to, make sure that the faculty are really taking the lead, and also that you're having some control over the sanctioned resources, so to speak, that are being shared there, which makes sense. Yes. And what I like about this model too is that, a lot of times when we talk to folks about how they're supporting their faculty, it's all done in a separate space always, so the faculty members in their course doing something and they're like, I don't know, this isn't really working for me, or I have a question about this, and they have to remember to go somewhere else and think about that. And I think a lot of things just get lost. So by actually creating access to this space right in the course that they're teaching, obviously hidden from the student, but it just really encourages, I think, the faculty to jump in whenever they have a question, or to just have all those things right at their fingertips, which I just think is a really neat approach.
Yes, that was really important to us, so that no one had to remember like, oh, I forgot to send the link to the community or the Google Drive to, the new professor. Yeah. That we give them access to the course, they get access to everything that they need to teach this effectively right off the bat. And
I did see a question in the chat about that. So the communities are integrated right into the LMS. Inscribe integrates with, all the major ones. So Canvas, Blackboard, D2L, Moodle, edX. So you name it, you can integrate your communities there. And the way that To Use done it is multiple course sections within their LMS are actually pointing to a shared community on our side. So that's how you can bring faculty together who might be teaching the same class, but in individual sections, you can bring them together into a shared space on the Inscribe side.
Yep, that was really important for us. So just to show an example, so this is our live session plan template that we are incorporating into the faculty course community. So this is an example. So places to, address learning objectives, reminders, and then scripting out what for instructors, what should you be doing with the 90 minutes you have in the live session. So some recommendations, guidance there. So that's just an example of what it might look like.
That's great.
Yeah, great. So that's the faculty course community. And then the other community we're utilizing is the what we're calling educator resources. So we have hundreds of these resources. I've got an army of my staff actively converting all our Google Docs into Inscribe resources, which has been a lot of fun, finding lots of ways to do that effectively. But we basically want to turn these educator resources communities into central hubs for faculty to find resources that they need to teach effectively. Also, it's going to serve as a place for faculty to ask a question like, hey, would you do this or that? If I've got 15 students, I want to do something fun to engage with them. Anyone got ideas? And people could share, here's a think, pair, share activity that I use, or, here's a method that's worked for us. We use the chat this way, whatever it is, people can gather some of those insights. Also for us, like I said earlier, being able to really get feedback from the faculty directly on a particular resource and say, this doesn't answer, I thought this was going to answer this question, it didn't. And then my learning designers can say, oh yeah, we can fix that. Or actually it's in this resource, we'll make that clear next time. Whatever it is, we can direct, guide faculty to the right resources or build things that we need to.
Well, that's good. I was going to say something and actually relates to a question that someone just posted in the chat, which is a lot of times when we work with folks like in the Center for Teaching and Learning and others where, they probably already have a website with a bunch of assets. You'd created yours in Google. What we hear the value of InScribe is just what you articulated, which it takes like what was a one-directional conversation of just pushing content out and turns it into a two-direction conversation. So faculty are able to contribute back to that repository their own ideas and best practices. They're able to ask follow-up questions on resources that you provided. And rather than all of that having to go through an email, they can do it in this space where everybody sees and benefits. So the question that came in was, do you find that that two-way is actually working? Is it mostly educators coming in and just consuming what you're providing? Or do you feel like that interaction is starting to take place as well?
Yeah, I would say right now, we're in the very early stages of all of this. So we haven't fully engaged all of our faculty in InScribe yet, but I would say mostly right now it's viewing the information, unless it's immediately after like a seminar or a specific thing that we've done, right? So we tend to see interaction with the resource if it's brought up in a training and then they got a follow-up question, or they've attended a workshop and then we've guided them to it and they're like, oh yeah, and I want to know this, this, and this, and this. So, but I would say majority of them look at the resource, see what I need to know, and I go about my day. So far. Part
of that might be the quality of resources you're providing. No follow-up questions needed.
Yes, that's what we're hoping. That's the goal, is that we are so robust that we've answered all the questions.
That is ultimately the goal. And I think that pattern that you are articulating is something that we see with other institutions too, which is not uncommon, right? So you sort of spur interest with a live event or some kind of new concept that you're bringing out. Everyone's trying to digest that concept. And so you tend to get more activity around it at that point in time. And then everyone settles into that new concept and, that sort of abates. And you also will see patterns in your educator communities very similar to what you see in really any virtual community, where you'll probably have a small number of people that are really active, contributing a lot, want to be out there talking, and a larger population that's really just benefiting from the content that you're providing or that those super active people are creating. So, not uncommon, but we always like to remind folks that those consumers of content are actually getting a huge benefit out of it as well, and learning a lot through that process.
Yeah, and I would say, that's one of the reasons we're pretty excited about the analytics that InScribe provides to see that, because before, we'd share out a Google Doc, and I see Vincent's question there. We will send resources out via email or in a newsletter or some kind. And we think people clicked on it because they're actually incorporating it in their classroom when we observe stuff or we're noticing the changes. But I can't necessarily say, yes, because we created that resource and we sent it out on this day, that I got this many people interacting with it directly. So now we're going to have more of that analytics, which is going to be really helpful for us to see what's working, what's not. How is our method of communication happening, and where is it effective?
Yep, perfect. Do you want to dig in on Vincent's question right now?
Yeah, sure. And so, yeah, so Vincent, we every way possible, I would answer any way we can think of. So for new faculty, we have our training course, our teaching, we call it Teaching Online with 2U training course that all new faculty are expected to go through prior to teaching. And so we have our community resources just it facilitated within that. So, and the nice thing about Inscribe and how it integrates with the platforms is most of the time they don't even realize they're in something else, because we can connect, I want you to look at this specific resource at this time in this module. So we link it there, they see it, oh, get it, great, move on. So we can introduce that there. And then for the faculty course communities, we're introducing that during our live training as we're walking them through, okay, here's the course, here's your content, here's your faculty course community. This is where you can ask questions about content and approach with all the other people teaching this course. Isn't that nice? And then we move on. So both of our communities right now, we kind of do it in that way, but then we do like basically a weekly newsletter. So we try and highlight certain resources that we have. So we'll link that directly. When they call out to our tech support team and say, hey, I've got this question, or I'm not sure. Typically our tech support team, if there is an article or a resource that we have that relates to the professor's question, they'll include that in the response so that they can reference it again. Hey, glad we solved your problem. If you have additional questions, or if you want to do this again, here's a resource that will walk you through those steps. So again, any place possible. And I bring them up in meetings all the time too. I say, hey, here's a resource for that. More
the better. That's right.
Yeah.
Awesome. So let's take a look how it works.
All right. So 2U uses several different LMSs across our platform. So we have a separate community for each of those LMSs so that we're having LMS specific resources and strategies. And though all the resources are populated and maintained by 2U. So we're not asking faculty to create resources. They can comment up and vote, downvote, but we're creating those and maintaining those. And then one of the things we're trying out, we're seeing how this works is we have, so if an LMS, if there's a group of faculty working in LMS, we have all the faculty from all our partner programs in that same community. So one of the unique opportunities we have as an organization is we can help connect and network faculty across our portfolio to really expand where you're getting ideas and information. But also we know that there are some, program specific resources or instructions that we want to be able to provide. So we're using that channel function in Inscribe to try and manage those resources. So kind of gating things so that, only our UNC folks can see this particular third-party integration that they use that no one else uses, or whatever that might be. So we're trying that out to see if that works. We're pretty excited about that opportunity in the Inscribe space. We have a separate community for our live session resources. So Zoom is what we use. And all of our faculty from all our partner programs will be in that community. So again, that's like one space to rule them all. All 4,000 active faculty from our partners are in there sharing ideas, resources, information, potentially, or at least getting the same information.
So what I like here is that you have this concept of bringing all faculty together, regardless of, in your case, regardless of institution or at least the program that you're teaching, because some things are relevant to everyone, but then also recognizing that you do need more targeted communication in certain instances. And so leveraging some of the subgrouping capability and things like that in Inscribe to create those targeted conversations as well, which I know most of the people, or all the people probably attending here, are not supporting faculty from 40 different institutions, but I can imagine that even at their school, there's things that everybody needs to know. And then there might be a need for a separate conversation with, the folks teaching math programs versus the folks teaching English language programs or something similar. So I love that you've created that opportunity for really big scale, but also targeted conversation.
Yeah, we're excited to see how that works. And how thinking, and it's really about like managing it all too for us, right? I didn't want to have to create 40 different versions of this resource for all different partners. when I can just make one and have them all, all there and maintain all that. So that was a thought too, as we're going. So this is a visual of how we've done our live session community, our live session resources. So we really tried to standardize some of the visuals so that you can see like the main topic as we've like used the topic feature, which we're also really excited about. So we can group resources together for faculty. And so we kind of use that to help navigation. So that's what that one looks like. And then for our LMS specific resources, I gave you an example of those channels at the top. So you can see those different channels. Now, those wouldn't be visible to everyone, but because, I've got fancy community admin access, I see them all. But so if you were in our UNC program, you would see just that channel at the top for those UNC specific resources. So there you go.
Very cool. Yeah. So, and then this gives you guys a little bit of a sneak peek of what the Inscribe platform actually looks like. So you can see those channels at the top, which are the subgroups that Ryan described. Again, you would only see the ones that you're a member of, and the other ones can be hidden. And then you start to see where Proctorio is, the topics that they're bringing in, and some of the resources and conversations that they provide for each topic. And then the nice thing is you can highlight, if you have moderators in your community, you can highlight them. They can introduce themselves, tell a little bit about themselves. So you're intermixing this ability to have a very practical purpose in the communities. It's really like, let's get information out to people so they can succeed, with that social component of seeing who else is there, really getting to know who's supporting you and building relationships in that way as well. So I love that aspect of it. Great. What additional questions, Danielle, have come in since we have been chatting? Anything you want us to touch on?
Yeah, we had a question early on. I mean, now that you're showing kind of the visual of what a community looks like, the early on question was in regards to student models. So Katie, maybe you can tell us some of the different student use cases as well.
Yeah, so, and Ryan touched on these a little bit at the beginning, because 2U's also thinking through how communities can help their students as well. So the model isn't that different for students as I'd say what it is for faculty. Our student communities are serving the same purpose. We're trying to connect students in a really efficient way to information and answers and other individuals that can help them navigate their learning journey. The two examples that 2U is using for student community are very common. So one is more of an advising or just a student to student social type of community where students are brought together across an institution. They'll talk about things like, how do I like financial aid or study skills, or, how do I register for my classes? So students helping each other, but also, potentially having advisors or coaches in there helping to answer those student questions. Those are all the things that are kind of taking place outside of the classroom. And then the other use case, which Ryan Allen described, is that more of that classroom community for the students themselves. So they have a place where they can talk to their peers, to the faculty member of their courses, maybe there's TAs in that course, to ask questions around the curriculum and just the learning of the course itself. Sometimes those communities are tied to an individual course section, or sometimes if you are teaching multiple sections of the same course, you again can bring your students together across those sections, give them one place to go talk about college algebra or whatever it is. And, the purpose is to help those students get to answers quickly, but also meaning the faculty now aren't having to answer the same question 50 or 100 times every semester. They answer it once and then all the students can benefit. And we put some time back in the faculty's day to do, more higher order type intervention and work. Was that helpful? Danielle?
That was super helpful. Yeah. And that was actually the only question that we had at this point in time. The two of you have been on top of the chat. So thank you so much for staying on top of it.
Awesome. Terrific. So Ryan, you mentioned you guys are just getting started. So you have a great vision. You've started to put together some really awesome implementation. I'm curious, when you think about the success criteria, what types of metrics and cues will tell you that this is working? What are you looking at?
Sure. And I happen to have a slide that answers that exact question. Look at that.
Funny how that
It's like
works.
we prepared for this. Yeah, I mean, with our educator resources, we kind of think of the new faculty and the continuing faculty, and the new faculty, I can kind of force them to engage with certain things through our training course. So, but I'm looking to see really with the new faculty, not only did they click on it, so are they doing the work? And usually like the resources are kind of like the extra thing that you do, right? So are they doing those extra steps to really engage? And then, and most importantly, do they come back, right? Like, will they come back to those resources later? Do they remember that we put that in there for them to guide them, or we talked about it in a training? And then our continuing faculty, right? Are they going back? Are they going to the resources? Are they utilizing them unprompted versus us prompting them through communication of some kind to look at those things? And so we want to be measuring those engagements. And then the ideal situation is if faculty are starting to engage using the up-down vote feature, commenting on those resources and giving us, quality feedback on how we can improve their experience through our resources, or how our resources have impacted their ability to teach better, right? We want that positive affirmation too. And now we have a space and platform for them to share those directly with us.
That's great.
So that's exciting.
We're going to have you back in 3 to 6 months. We'll do this again, and we'll be able to actually look at all the data that you're generating and see how we hold up against the goals that you want to achieve here, which I think is great.
Pretty charts and graphs and all that fun stuff.
Absolutely. Well, again, for those folks, I see another question related to students. I'm gonna pause on that, Peter, for 1 second, but I will answer that. But if others have, as you're thinking about whether this could be working at your institution or with your faculty, if you have questions, concerns, like, I don't think this would ever work with my faculty for the following reason, or I think it could work, definitely type those into the chat, because we'd love to address those. Or maybe Ryan Allen can also reflect on if you're having, particular hurdles that you're trying to overcome. I'm sure he's run into them himself, so he'd be happy to maybe speak to some of the techniques that he and his team have used to overcome those. As we give you guys a minute to think about, formulate some of those questions. Peter, I see your question about how do you monitor, and I know you're relating this specifically to student communities, so ones where faculty maybe are not the main focus, and the question around integrity, or how do you make sure that people aren't being inappropriate. So I'll just talk about that generally. I don't think we expect faculty to do anything inappropriate, but you never know. They also get a bit grumpy sometimes.
Never.
So obviously the moderation of the communities and being able to stay on top and make sure the communities stay healthy is very important to us, as we know it is to our institutions. And there's a couple of tools that we have built into the platform to help with that. The number one thing is these communities are not anonymous. So although there is the ability to make an anonymous post, the moderators of the community can always see who that individual is. And the participants of the community know that. So you're coming in and you're presenting that, this is a professional space, this is a learning space. And what we see is that the members of the community, by and large, honor that. And we don't see a lot of, people, misrepresenting or mistreating the community. Now, with that said, we have a couple of tools in place that if somebody were to, we can catch that pretty quickly. The AI that got mentioned a couple of times, we have a learning assistant in our platform called Rosie, and she helps think about the health and the scalability of our communities. And one of the things Rosie does is she'll monitor all of the conversations for a big set of keywords. If one of those keywords ever appears, Rosie will automatically flag that post and escalate it to a moderator. But more subtly, she also runs every conversation through a sentiment API. So that's essentially measuring the emotion of the conversation that's happening. And if the emotion of a conversation starts to get very negative, like very angry or frustrated or even really confused, Rosie can proactively identify that, flag that, and alert a moderator to jump in and take a look at that post, because that might be an individual who's just kind of fed up or like at the end of their line. And it might just be a conversation you need to address right away, or maybe it's somebody that you just, needs you to pick up the phone and call them. So sometimes that happens with students. I imagine that also sometimes happens with faculty. So those are some of the tools that we have in place to just make sure the community stay healthy and on track. Katie, I see, also had a question about the moderators. So Ryan Allen, how did you decide who was going to be moderating your faculty communities? And do you have any faculty from institutions who are also moderators, or is it primarily you and your team?
Yeah, for our educator resources, it's members of my team. So we've kind of divided and conquered that group to determine who's gonna keep an eye on those and creating them. And then I have one person, my learning experience designer, is kind of supervising it, our Inscribe educator resources from a bigger picture lens to make sure that we're all on top of it. For the faculty course communities, we are really relying on the course leads. So the way 2U powered programs are structured is every course has a designated faculty member who serves as the lead of that course. And so part of their responsibility would be creating and maintaining the lesson plans that are in those faculty course communities, as well as iterating on content generally and working with our team to do that. So that person would have the responsibility of moderating the faculty course communities in our model.
Awesome. Yeah, and the moderators vary, I would say, a little bit by community. It tends to be, whoever is kind of responsible for managing that already, giving them more of a centralized, scalable space to do that. But moderators can be drawn from all different kinds of places, and having a variety of moderators sometimes makes it even more interesting because you get different perspectives and levels of participation. So thanks for Ryan Allen. Let's jump to the next one and keep the questions coming in if you still have them, but I know we're getting close to the top of the hour here. So I want to just thank you, Ryan Allen, for joining us today and sharing your experience. Certainly a unique world that you live in, the number of faculty that you're supporting and the diversity of them. But I know, your own experiences and the work that you've done is super relevant for all the folks that have joined us today who are also trying to figure out how to navigate that with their own faculty as well. So if folks have other questions for Ryan Allen about his work at 2U or other faculty support that he's doing outside of the work with Inscribe, I'm sure he'd be happy to provide some answers there as well. So feel free to follow up now, or you can follow up with me later and I can put you guys in touch. And then for me, if you're interested in learning more about Inscribe, I know Danielle dropped a link into the chat so you can see our website and reach out to us there, or you can just reach out to me directly. I'm Katie at katy@inscribeapp.com. Feel free to shoot me an email or reach out to us to the website. We'd love to talk to you and see if there's ways that we could help support you in your faculty and professional development journey. So thank you everyone for joining us.